Miss Kathy Moore will be our moderator for this level. We may reuse some of the questions we used for the Senate candidates. We may introduce other ones, depending on time. So would you please put your hands together and give Ms. Moore a round of applause.
Thank you very much. It is indeed my pleasure being here. Thank you all for spending your evening here. And without any further ado, I have spoke to both Tanya Cabala and Andy O'Reilly, and Mr. O'Reilly has agreed that Tanya Cabala can go first. So the topic question is, oh yes, yes. So first is the overarching question. Please share with our audience this evening what qualifies you to be a candidate for the House of Representatives.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay, good. My name is Tanya Cabala. I always say that because I think there's not too many Tanyas out there. They're all Tanyas. That's okay. I am a lifelong resident of the 91st District. I live in Whitehall. I live in the house that I grew up in. I know my district well. My parents were teachers. They both belonged to the MEA, the union. They also taught before that, so we were very appreciative of the MEA. I thought I was going to be a teacher the rest of my life and follow in their footsteps, and that was not the case. I got married and I had kids, and I taught for a few years, and when I was off, when my kids were little, I realized that the White Lake area had some pretty serious pollution problems, and got very involved in cleaning up different areas and cleaning up White Lake, and I was obsessive enough because I did it as my full-time job free of charge that I got hired by a Great Lakes group. So it kind of changed my life. As part of that, I helped to set up a citizen group for White Lake and one for Muskegon Lake as well. We worked to clean up White Lake for 22 years. It's probably one of the best things that I've been involved with, and very glad to hang in there that long, and we learned a lot of lessons about working with state and federal government. I also worked as a consultant to a number of Great Lakes groups for over a decade across the region, and I served on my city council for 12 years, 3 4-year terms, and I also served on the Planning Commission, the Fire Authority Board, and the Solid Waste Board, and I led our sesquicentennial effort. We were 150 years old a while back. The last few years, I've been a substitute teacher. I've been in the schools. Really kind of fun to see the kids after 30 years and see the schools and see the changes. That's actually one reason why I'm running. I've looked around at the landscape, and the priorities in Lansing are not mine. Everything I care about is at risk, and my priorities would be vastly different. My priorities would be about making sure that there are opportunities for everybody, every citizen in Michigan, to prosper, and that's what I'm about. My entire life has been about helping make my part of the world better. I would like to go to Lansing and use the lessons that I've learned over the last 30 years to help change things. I have kids and I have grandkids and I have people I care about, and I'm not interested in leaving this Michigan for people I care about.
Thank you, Tanya. Andy O'Reilly.
Thank you. My name is Andy O'Reilly. I grew up over in Sparta. Most of my younger days were spent here in Muskegon because Grand Rapids hadn't bloomed yet. We had nothing in Grand Rapids. My early career, I spent in the radio. I started as a radio intern when I was 19 years old, and worked my way up to that first job to the second in charge of that first radio station. I came here in about 98, 99, to run the rock radio station here in town. When I came here, it was a satellite-fed, forgotten entity of a radio station. We had a job to do, and that was to make that radio station real and active in the community once again. The first thing that they brought to my attention was that they were going to fire the guy that was doing mornings when I was going to be coming in, and I told them under no circumstances would I take the job if you were going to fire him and have me come to town with his blood on my hands. That move forced them to put the whole radio station live, which we did, and we made it #1 inside of a few years. As time went on, I took control of that radio station. I was the program director. And as the company evolved, we got sold 4 times while we were there. And the company, toward the end, was going back to what we were. We were going to be another automated, fed from out-of-town entity, and we were going to have no real local control over anything again, so I left. Not to mention that their priorities had changed from being a community service-based radio station. Their radio stations are federally licensed to serve communities. We were no longer doing that. I wasn't allowed to have somebody on the air to talk about a benefit of a spaghetti dinner for a cancer patient unless they paid. They told me flat out, unless they pay you, they are not on the air to talk about anything, period. My ideals didn't match that, so I left. I took a quick job in NASCAR for a year. I did promotions in PR on the Sprint Cup Series. I came back to find the media still didn't exactly match what I was trying to accomplish in Muskegon, so I started a blog called Positively Muskegon, which has grown into not only that, but we've got another entity now called the MuskegonChannel.com, where we focus on telling the better stories of Muskegon. We don't talk about who got shot. We don't want to talk about the liquor store got robbed. We talk about people that have made a difference and done something great in their community, and we give them the platform and the spotlight to say who they are and what they've done and why. That's all started in 2015. We are now 3 years into it and are just coming up on 1 million page views between the two. I am the assistant mayor in Roosevelt Park. I'm the grandfather of 9, and I have a wife and a daughter that are both teachers in the MEA, one at Fruitport and one at Montague. Looking forward to the election come up August 7th, and we'll see where it takes us from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. You will retain the mic for the question of economic development. Michigan's economic development continues to be a key element in the new economy. Discuss what programs you have implemented or what ideas you will propose to develop new initiatives and attract industries, businesses to your respective areas. What role does tax incremental financing, TIF, play in the process? Can these elements be construed as corporate welfare?
The first thing I have to bring up about this is something we recently had in Roosevelt Park. We had a bid on a road project of about $400,000, and we had an outside of Muskegon company bid $20,000 less than a Muskegon company. And we took a vote as a board, and we didn't get the votes on the first one for the outside company. I voted for the $420,000 project, and it was met with some dirty looks. And they're like, why did you just cost our community $420,000? I said, well, take a look at that again. I kept $400,000 in Muskegon. I didn't send it to Grand Rapids. I think that's where we need to start. I think we need to keep our local businesses working first. I think that's a big, big deal. I mean, if you think about what we spend on anything from juvenile, the juvenile rehabilitation program, that we just saw the thing fail last year with the millage. It was terrible. The amount of money we spend to fix our kids and then bring them right back to the same problem that they left is ridiculous. Take care of our own money. Take care of our stuff. Pay our bills first. Take care of our people first. TIF, I had to look that up quick when we first got in here. And to me, I think everybody ought to pay their fair share. I don't think there should be any corporate welfare. I think everybody ought to pay their fair share and do their part. We have to pay our taxes. I didn't see much from the Trump bonus at the end of the year last year. I still had to pay in at the end of last year. So incremental financing, corporate welfare, it's got to come to an end. We all have to do our own part. And to develop new initiatives, keep our money at home, spend locally, take care of our own people first, and don't always think that the bargain is exactly the bargain, because sending $400,000 out of Muskegon is an awful lot of money on one project. Multiply that by multiple projects, and look how much money we could keep here in town.
Thank you, Andy. Tanya, same question.
Sure. I apologize. This is like right in my view, so I feel like I can't. Maybe I'm too short. Okay. Anyway, economic development is very important. It's very important on a state level. I'm a firm believer that the top key to economic development is our schools. If we have good schools, we will attract business. We lost Amazon because they said our schools are ranking at the bottom. So in order to attract companies to our state, to our area, we have to have good schools. I know one of the first questions people ask me when they're moving to the area is, where are the best schools? You know, so we have to improve our schools. That's one of the top things. Also, this one does not seem like a real direct factor, but a clean environment. That's the other piece of it. We have something, you know, the pure Michigan and the Great Lakes that we can offer because when companies come to town, and I heard this from being on city council, they want to live in a place where they can attract people to come. They can attract talent to come to the area. And that means that our lakes and our rivers and our beautiful landscapes are very important, an important piece of that package. So we have to continue to maintain strong environmental protections. As far as the TIF, you know, that's just an interesting question. I think one of the things I would actually like to do a little bit more of, especially being on my city council, you know, sometimes they would say, well, you know, you're giving advantages to some of the big corporations, you know, reduce taxes for a certain number of time, but what about small businesses, the small businesses that are run by families who have lived in our town forever? What incentives do we have? And I was really glad to see just a few days ago a proposed bill at the state level to help small businesses in the state of Michigan, and I would be very supportive of that. Just a number of different things to make sure that small businesses can thrive. I think also the other recent proposal for free community college is another example of something that will help our economy. So there are a lot of things that we can do, but I think education is probably the top, and making sure that we are fair with not only with corporations, but with all of the small businesses that make up our communities.
Thank you, Tanya. Next question is relative to Michigan's infrastructure. Despite increases in the gasoline tax and the vehicle registration fees, Michigan's infrastructure continues to deteriorate at an alarming rate. What ideas or initiatives would you propose to help address this concern in a feasible manner? Please make sure you explain how you would fund these elements.
Okay, me? Okay. This is pretty interesting because we've certainly heard, when I was on council, and I just was off last fall, one of the biggest complaints was the state of the roads in our city. And it was kind of hard sometimes for us to explain that all during my tenure on city council, we had less and less state revenue sharing from the state of Michigan. So one answer to this question, at least at the local level, is making sure that communities have adequate state revenue funds in order to, at the very least, take care of their own roads. One of the things I learned through that process is that the longer you let them go, the more you're going to have to replace them, the more money you're going to have to spend. So basically, it pays to maintain them on a regular level. Going to the state level, we haven't been doing that. Basically, we've been rating the general budget for different priorities and not recognizing that roads are a priority every year. Now, this year we had a surplus, so more money went to infrastructure. But we're not always going to have an infrastructure, and we're going to spend more money if we wait as long as we are. So we need to make it a regular priority. And we also need to make sure that those who kind of put the greatest burden on our roads are paying their fair share, and that's certainly the overweight trucks and corporations.
Thank you, Tanya. Andy, same question.
We are kind of in agreement on this one. I think that what we see revenue sharing wise, and I'm no expert on the subject, but what we see revenue sharing wise is stalemated. We don't see enough coming in from anybody at the state. And we need to know why. Why is that not getting back to us? It's our money. It's what we've paid in. And why are under the, you know, again, not to really throw the mud at a different party or anything, but we've been under Republican control for 8 years. Why is that money not making its way back to us? It's what we need. It's what it makes our communities function. It's part of the agreement, so it's not there. Plus the trucks too. I mean, it's been discussed 3 times here tonight. If you're not doing your part, I mean, this is all of us. We should all be doing our part, no matter if you're paying for a car, if you're paying for multiple trucks on the road, pay your fair share. I think that's really all there is to it.
Thank you, Andy. This question, you will start with this question as well. The topic is education. Education continues to be a top concern among many voters in your respective districts. Discuss how you hope to address the issues of funding K through 12 and community colleges, which see higher levels of support going to wealthy districts and fewer resources going to poor or rural areas.
Our daughter taught over in the middle of the state for a while, and it was 90% of the kids there had free or reduced breakfast. 100% of the kids had free breakfast. 90% of them had free lunch every day. And if you look at Muskegon and how many we have to feed here daily, it shows us a lot of our educational priorities. How do these kids expected to learn if they're hungry? Poppy's answer was phenomenal. Prioritize these schools by what they need. I mean, we have to look at what these kids need. It should, I'm no expert on funding schools. I won't even come out and say different. But to me, we have to look at what the school kids need on a per district basis. If they need to be fed, we need to feed them. We need to make sure they have the fuel in their body to learn. If they need language arts, if they need English as a second language, we need to have more teachers in there to take care of that kind of thing. To fund this kind of stuff, let's just flatten it out. Let's raise that student fee, or per student fee going into the schools, and let's take a look at where the money is going. I did a little research project on the Success Learning Academy in Roosevelt Park. I asked I asked out at the ISD, how much money are we losing in our school districts to these virtual learning academies? It's over $2 million a year that are going into these for-profit learning academies on per pupil. I mean, their per pupil funding is taking $2 million out of our school district per year. That's an awful lot of money to be taken away for a for-profit entity when it should be going in to educate our kids. It's not right. We need to stop that kind of thing. I went to a parochial school and my parents had to pay every penny of it. I think that's, if you want your kids in a charter school, or if you want your kids in a virtual academy, you should pay for it. Public education is a trust that we have built over years. We pay into it for a reason. It's not for our kids, it's not for it's for the kid down the street to have an education, have a chance to continue on what we've got going in this country. That's what we build, and that's what we need to do. We need to protect that, and we need to make sure that that funding is there. And we need to stop the bleed when it comes to these virtual schools and these charter academies.
Thank you, Andy. Tanya, same question.
My eyes were really opened when I started subbing in the schools the last few years, because it'd been 30 years since I've been in the school. And like I mentioned, it's one reason that I stepped up from run for office. Not only was there a learning curve with all the digital equipment, I could tell fairly quickly that our schools are in crisis. The teachers are excellent. If anything, they're better than they were. But there are all kinds of issues in the schools that are getting in the way of our students learning as much as they should. And one of the biggest is that we do have an inequitable system in our state. What's interesting is in 2016, the legislature spent about $500,000 on a study. One of the major conclusions was we have an inequitable school system. They didn't do anything. A couple years later, a group of businesses did another expensive study. One of the major conclusions, we have an inequitable school system, nothing done. What's interesting to me is just recently, a new law has come into place where a few years ago, a teacher's evaluation, 25% of the evaluation was tied to student scores. Now it's 40%. We don't know what we're doing. It's not the teachers. The teachers are not going to do a better job because their evaluations are now tied 40%. We need to have state legislators who understand what's happening in the schools. And one of the, I've asked teachers, what would you tell your state legislator if they were here right before you? And they look at me and they're like, you know, it's always nice when they come in and read at March Reading Month, but you know what? They need to come in and teach a day, sub. And I said, you know what? You got it. I'll do it. In fact, I'll do it for a week because I would love to be back in the classroom because I'm going to miss the kids. And we need to have what happens at the state legislature reflect the real life, the reality in the schools. And I will challenge every other state legislator to spend a day or a week in the schools so they really understand what's happening. Our public schools are for everyone. They are that important. We need to fund them properly, and we also need to make sure that tax dollars go to public schools. Tax dollars should not be going to for-profit entities.
Thank you, Tanya. Andy, same question.
Already answered.
Oh, well then, I have a new question for you, Tanya.
Okay, okay.
At least I tried.
Okay, the next question is regarding public pensions. Tanya, government pension reforms have been a topic for legislative action in Lansing for the past 8 years. It appears that some groups have been targeted quite heavily with the diminution of their pension programs, teachers, for example, while others have gone relatively unscathed, judges, district attorneys, state police. Please discuss how you will address the issue of pension shortfalls and how will you make these changes equitable?
Well, I want to go back to the education issue just briefly. One of the reasons that we are in crisis in our schools is teachers are leaving. Teachers are leaving for about 100 problems. One of them is their salaries are going down and their pensions are being cut. That was one of the things that did hold teachers in their career that's leaving. To me, this is about fairness. Pension is deferred compensation. People agreed to that when they took that job, and it is not fair that they are asked to reduce that many years down the road, and especially if they're seniors and on a fixed income. So I think fairness is key. I think we also have to assure that state revenues go to bodies so that they can pay for these pensions. You know, if we're not fully funding schools, if we're keeping money away from our cities with the state revenue sharing, you know, it's going to be hard for them to handle these pensions. But I think we have to. I think promises made need to be promises kept.
Thank you, Tanya. Andy.
First thing with a teacher pension that's going to happen is I'm going to duck, because I have a wife that's a teacher, and when her pension gets messed with, it's bad at home. We've lived through this, and we've seen the ugly side of it. For a guy that's got a wife and a daughter that are teachers, and to have watched what has gone on with teachers and their pay and the way that the teachers are being treated in the system, it's overwhelming to me. I mean, these were promised funds, and for some reason, all of a sudden, it's not there. It's not right. We've promised these people this money, and it's a promise made is a promise kept. Look at what teachers make now, though, and look at what the union does for them. It's not as strong as it used to be. I love the MEA. I love the unions. I grew up in a union household, and I'm all for what they stand for. But the effectiveness isn't there. The teachers in their tenure isn't as strong as it used to be. I mean, it was all yanked by the governor a couple of years ago, and they don't have the base to stand on that they used to, unfortunately. And it's a scary time for teachers. Tanya talked a little bit about teaching to the test, and that's what's going on. Is that fair to a teacher that you're trying to reach through to a kid and get them to understand and do and perform and do all this other kind of stuff when maybe that's not their aptitude? You know, should a teacher be evaluated on what that group of students does? Or should they be evaluated on how they perform overall? I just think the teaching to the test thing has really gotten out of hand, and I think that this pension stuff, as they've worked toward younger teachers and lower pay, and look what goes in. I mean, if they're not paying into the pension fund, it's going to dry up sooner or later. How do we mitigate that? How do we stop that? We have to take care of what's been promised, and as these new teachers come in and they want to change it, fair enough. But think about the quality of educator you're going to get down the line as well, for what you're going to be paying for these people to teach your kids down the line. It should be a pretty penny, and it should be well worth what every nickel they make, because we live it, and we see what these kids are like in school today, and we see what the baggage they carry in from home. We see what they carry in from their daily life. Two parents having to work 2 jobs, all that other kind of stuff. It makes it tough on a kid to go to school, and it makes it even tougher on the teachers. So to dangle that pension out over their head and say, oh, you might get it, you might not, it's not fair. It's a promise that was made, and it's a promise that needs to be delivered on.
Thank you, Andy. Hold on to the mic for the next question. It's public assistance. One of the largest expenses which state government grapples with is the cost of basic public assistance support programs in our most indigent population. What are your thoughts on assisting those who fall into the subsistence level programs? What should the state government's role be in helping the poor and the elderly?
Anybody that truly needs a hand should get it. Anybody that truly needs the help. There are people out there, though, that have gone so long and they've lost their way. They've failed to see anything in themselves because that's all they know is how to get something for nothing. It's devastating. I lived it for a while. I never lived off state handouts. I never lived off any state assistance, but I lived off parents' assistance. Every time I needed $100, I turned around. Mom, can I get this? Mom, can I get that? And it took me quite a while to realize that that was really crushing me as a person. And my story's been told a million times. It's not like it's a big secret. I never learned what I could do. I never learned that I could stand on my own 2 feet. I never understood what it was like to accomplish something, what it was like to know at the end of the day, I did that. And for people that struggle and need the help for a little while, and when they become dependent on that, they don't know better. How do we motivate them to learn and see what they can accomplish? How do we get them to that point to see that their life can change and what they can do is incredible? How do we help those that really need the help? Well, we just do it. We take care of them as friends and neighbors. We give them the assistance they need through the state. We take care of the food. We take care of the bills. We find our agencies in town, like a lot of them that I work with, to get them their needs. But for those that can find that spark of hope, those that can find their way off that assistance, those that can see something out in their lives other than what they get for nothing, how do we find that way to spark that? And how do we see their life change and let them see what they can accomplish and what they can do and really become that miracle? Because it's amazing to watch that transformation happen.
Thank you, Andy. Tanya, same question.
We absolutely have to have a safety net, especially in these times. I have knocked on hundreds of doors, and I've met lots of people who are really struggling. And that is one reason that I'm running, because we need to make sure that healthcare is affordable. I've heard stories where people are going without healthcare. People get bankrupted because of a medical situation, and people are working 2 and 3 jobs. You know, this is the reality out there, and so we need to make sure healthcare is affordable to the extent that we can as a state, and there are a number of different models we can look at. And we also need to make sure that if adults work 40 hours, they can live. They don't have to get 2 and 3 jobs, and that's just not the case right now in Michigan. So especially now, we have to have a safety net. I think how we care about people who run into trouble on an occasional basis, how we care about people who really struggle and need more help than an occasional basis, that defines us as a people. These are essential services that Michigan has got to provide.
Thank you, Tanya. This will be the final question, and then we'll move into the final summaries. So Tanya, you will start. Sure. Student reading proficiency. The state of Michigan recently implemented a new law which requires all 3rd graders to read at grade level or suffer being retained. What is your position on this issue? How would you assure parents and the public that this is not another initiative which is merely designed to meddle with the education system and to assist the large testing corporations like ACT and SAT?
This, to me, is just another example of state legislators who are in charge in Lansing not understanding what happens in a classroom. This is, it's ignoring the real issues. It's not knowing what the real issues are. As a teacher years ago, as a person who had parents who were teachers, my ex-husband was a teacher, my brother was a teacher, my sister was a paraprofessional. I know teaching, I know kids. It's not gonna help. You know, if anything, it's going to make matters worse. I think what we need to do is what I've said before. We need to fully fund all public schools adequately. We need to look at a lot of other things like class size. We need to make sure there's adequate resources, mental health resources, social workers, paraprofessionals. We need to make sure that salaries are adequate and benefits are adequate. I actually know 2 teachers who are on state assistance because they haven't had a raise in 7 years, because the state legislature has now allowed local school boards to make that, it's no longer a mandated step raise, it's now up to the local school boards, and so they're saying, well, I guess we don't have to give you a raise for 7 years, you know. So we've got some real problems in the school. This is not targeting what the real problems are.
Thank you, Tanya. Andy, same question.
The more I thought about this question, the more it feels like a threat to me. Reading starts at home. My parents were very, very big on reading. By the time I was 7, I could read pretty well. Good enough to get my first record, to be honest with you. And that was kind of the start of my whole life. It was really a great memory. So reading has always been a big deal, but if you look at where it starts, it's at home. And if parents are out of the house, and if parents are working 2 or 3 jobs, and they don't have the opportunity to sit down and read with those kids, and they send them to school, and they put it all on the teachers to catch up on those formative years. I mean, they say you're supposed to start reading to your kid while they're still in the womb to get that reading thing going. And now you're telling them that by the 3rd grade, you're going to have to be held back because your reading level's not there. It sounds more and more like a threat to me. I was held back in the 7th grade. It was talked about earlier tonight that it was this big stigma. And you know what? At the time, it kind of hurt. And it was a little embarrassing. But as time goes on, too, you learn that those decisions are not made out of spite. And they're not made to make you feel dumb as a kid or anything like that. They're made by people that are smarter and know that you're just not quite ready for something. So to see a kid held back at any grade for any level is not the end of the world. It's really not. But to see thousands of them held back at the 3rd grade level because of their reading, I think that speaks volumes to us as a society and where we are, that we don't have the opportunity to educate our kids before they even get to school, when the teacher should pick up with them and carry on what we've taught them already. I think that talks a lot about us as a society. We need to do better. We need to have better paying jobs that afford us that opportunity to have parents at home that can teach these kids. I think we need to have better parent interactivity. I think we need to take more responsibility for that. And the fact that we just don't make enough money in and around the area here, or in the state for that matter, speaks volumes to where we see our kids having this problem. And now we're threatening them with a failure in the 3rd grade because they can't read. It just doesn't seem quite right to me. Working their way toward those big tests. I mean, by the time you're looking at an ACT or SAT, you should be well past your reading and all that kind of stuff. So I can't speak to how those would tie in.
Thank you, Andy. And thank you very much, both candidates, for taking the time. We are at the point of the final summary. So in conclusion, Andy, will you please present for 2 minutes why people should vote for you?
I never imagined I'd be sitting here, to be honest with you. I never imagined that my career would take me where it did. I started off as a guy that wanted to be on the radio at one point, and my career brought me here to Muskegon. When I came here, I had nothing. I had an alcohol problem and a couch. And as time went on, it'll be 15 years August 6th that alcohol problem has been gone. This community loved me before I knew how to love myself. When I left the radio, I was afraid that when I gave the word, I was afraid that everybody would see me as the next guy that was leaving Muskegon and, you know, up yours, Andy, you know, thanks for bailing on us, and that was that. Made the front page of the paper because there were over 1,000 responses to my message on Facebook that said, "You've done all you can do here, go live your life. Thank you." And it was overwhelming. And it taught me well that I owe this community a lot. I'll continue my work here. I will take this message of my pride in this community to Lansing, and I'll bring people back that want to believe in what we have. We're good people. I'm tired of being minimized. I'm tired of seeing every story come out about Muskegon that somebody got shot or some liquor store got robbed or somehow we're not as good as the rest of West Michigan. I'll defend this community till the day I die. I'm proud of us. I'm proud of who we are. I'm proud of where we're going. And I'm proud of the things that we have seen start. And I want to see them finish. I want to see that casino get built. I want to see our convention center go up. And I want to see our local people have a hand in all of this and the rebuilding of our community. That's why I want to be your candidate. And I ask for your vote August 7th.
Thank you, Andy. Tanya, 2 minutes to explain why people should vote for you.
Okay, just to summarize, my track record goes back to 1989. I have worked with local, state, and federal government all during that time, and I have to tell you, I learned a lot of lessons. I learned about sitting down with people who had very different viewpoints than I did and trying to figure out how to come to solutions together, and I think that's what we need. It's not the fact that I'm soft-spoken or weak or anything like that. People who know me know that I speak up and I speak out and I stand firm on my values and principles. On the other hand, I think one thing that's very valuable right now is the ability to do that in a civil and diplomatic way. It doesn't mean that I agree with somebody's different viewpoint, and it may even be abhorrent to me, an awful viewpoint. But this is something that we need, and this is something that I learned over the last 30 years. I think it's something that we need in Lansing. This is really a little bit less about me than about the ability to win this seat and the ability to have the majority in Lansing. I have, since I announced last fall, I subbed K through 8 almost every single day. And when I came home, I got on the campaign trail, whether that was going to an event or raising funds or doing whatever I needed to do to win this seat. And I want you to understand that I have been a workaholic my whole life, and I'm not done. I am putting full time into it this summer because my goal is to win this seat so we can have the majority and we can start setting the agenda again. And I will work just as hard in Lansing as I have for 30 years, 29 to be exact, and this last year in order to win this seat. So I really appreciate you all being here, and thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Please give our candidates a round of applause.
And let's give our moderator a round of applause.
Thank you.
And more importantly, give yourselves a round of applause, because without your participation, democracy doesn't work. Thank you for coming this evening. The candidates are here tonight to visit with you. Please take the time to engage them. I'm sure you have questions for them. And welcome. Thank you for participating.